Hi, and welcome to the Higher Education Access Corner. I'm your host, Tiffanie, and joining me again at the table once again are our PA Forward account execs, Dan Wray and Linda Pacewicz. Hi, Dan. Hi, Linda. Thanks for joining me again today.
All right, Tiff, thanks for having us here.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Absolutely. And today we are going to be talking about something that's very, very important. It's really a big thing, I think, for every student, every borrower to be aware that they do have options. Everyone pretty much knows that for the federal student loan program, the student loan payment pause and that zero interest rate is about to come to an end. So interest will start accruing again, September 1st, and students will go into repayment as early as October. So for many, they're trying to struggle and figure out how do they come up with a reasonable repayment plan, some different options for them. Today, what we're going to talk about is consolidation and refinance. Many people think it's the same thing, but it's actually a difference. And Dan and Linda are going to dive in, tell us all about it, what the difference is, who should take advantage of it, pros and cons, and all that good stuff that's out there. So to get started, I just kind of wanted us to kind of have like we're at ground level now. So let's just assume we're talking to students, and it doesn't just have to be federal student loans, but talking to students or borrowers who do happen to have student loans before they consider any type of different repayment plan, whether it's a repayment plan through the federal government, whether it's a refinance or consolidation. I think it's good. I think we all think it's good that they have an understanding of what they currently have. So can you all talk about that and just what that piece looks like for students?
Yeah, that's my first question. When somebody starts talking to me about loans and what should I do, well, what type of loans are we talking about here? Because the options with federal loans can be way different from your options if you've got private loans, and then folks who have both federal and private. There's some other things we need to talk about there. So really, yeah, the ground floor is let's get on to studentaid.gov, get you logged in and find out if you have federal loans, and if you do, how many, how much, who's your servicer, and then if there's private loans, then we need to start talking about that as well. But yeah, that's the starting point. What type of loans do we have here?
Mm-hmm. Also, you want to look at what are the repayment options that are available to you. So before you're going to go and consolidate your federal loans or refinance private and federal, what repayment plans are offered through that so that you can compare what the repayment will be once you consolidate. And in most cases, you're saving some money by consolidating it. I shouldn't say saving some money, but you could save some money. Definitely if you have a high rate loan and you're consolidating or refinancing to a lower interest rate, but a lot of times you're extending the time frames as well for repaying. And of course, the longer you extend it, the more interest you have to pay. However, sometimes you just need that smaller payment for the time being, so that you can afford that and get it. There you go. Me too. Life happens and you just need that smaller payment. Yeah. But there's never any prepayment penalties. And if you find that the rates go down, you can consolidate and refinance again. So it's just, it's not like you're stuck, but it's a great opportunity to compare. Can I make this more affordable for myself? Yeah, and that is important.
I do like to specify that terminology. Some people use it interchangeably, but I find it helpful to keep the terms separate, because the federal government's program is federal direct consolidation loan. That's where you get a federal loan that pays off all of your underlying federal loans. So all the existing loans go away. Now you have a new loan that is a federal direct consolidation loan. The interest rate is a weighted average of the loans that were paid off. So I use that terminology, consolidation, when it's just federal loans we're talking about. On the private loan side, most people use the term refinance. And depending on the lender, you may be able to refinance federal and private loans, put them all together into one new refinance loan that is made by a lender, not by the federal government. I like to keep those terms separate. It helps me keep it straight in my mind. I think it helps people that I'm working with as well to keep in mind their options: federal consolidation, private refinance.
And I think that's a
Helps
good
me.
point. Yeah, that's a good point, because a lot of times folks will use it interchangeably and they get confused. They don't know, well, I'm going to refinance with the federal government, with the federal Department of Education. Not necessarily. You're consolidating. So there can be differences with it. A couple questions that hopefully, and I know we're going to be talking a little bit more. Are there certain times or certain benefits to consolidation versus refinancing? But before maybe we tackle into that, it looked like, Linda, I don't know if you had something that you wanted to add into that. So to where Dan was going with the differences, or are you good?
Well, Dan is correct. They're definitely different, and you have to weigh your options, because consolidation, like Dan said, is a weighted average. And my simplistic calculations of that is, if you have 4 interest rates, for example, if you have 4 years of loans, you add that up and divide by 4, that's going to be your new interest rate. Where refinance is looking at your current FICO scores and your income to see if you can afford that loan, and the rates will be based on their rates are very different from all different lenders. So certainly you want to do your homework when you're deciding on who I want to refinance with or what I want to refinance. But the main piece is you have to be graduated. You have to be out of school, and your grace period, you want to make sure that you have to wait till you're close to the end of the grace period, because nobody wants to lose that. And then you can make those decisions, but you can use that time to do all your research. You want to make sure you understand it. There's many calculators out there to decide, is this good for me, or what am I losing? Because federal loans, they have certain safety nets included that not all private loans have. Right, Dan?
I'll give you a quick example on me as a parent. I had some old federal plus loans, right, that were at, let's see, what were they? 8.25%, 8.5%, something like that. And PA Forward didn't exist back when I wanted to put all those things together. So I got a federal direct consolidation loan that ended up being at about 8.3, 8.4%. Whereas, if PA Forward had existed back then, I could have, gone on my credit score, my credit history, right? I could have probably gotten a 3.5, 4% interest rate to refinance, instead of just getting a weighted average of my existing federal loans. And that's just one example. There's some other considerations we'll get into later, but I did want to specify that particular example, how with a federal direct consolidation, I'm there with my existing rates. With refinance, I can potentially do better based on my credit history.
Right. And I think it's important to note that it's an individual evaluation, because depending on when those federal loans were taken out will determine what your rates look like. So it could be, like you said, it definitely was a good thing for you, because you came out with a lower rate. For that student who maybe they got in their older loans and they have a really low federal interest rate and they've taken a weighted average, or they're one of the ones that, and I don't know if they're still out there, if they've been paid off, but maybe they had some type of incentive, like a reduced interest rate after making so many payments. And so they had a lower rate. They could possibly lose benefits. Yeah. Oh, they still exist? I didn't know if they were still there.
Some of them are still on the books, yes.
So I think it's still important for that person who's considering it a consolidation or a refinance, not through the Department of, or even through the Department of Education. You may lose those benefits, but it's also important to note, to weigh the odds. Is it worth losing that in order to gain maybe a lower, more affordable interest rate, possibly going to, get yourself in a better position financially in the long haul. So it's a good thing to, again, know what you have, know all the benefits that are out there that you are receiving or could potentially lose, but then also know what you could possibly gain by switching over. with those things.
Yeah.
And again,
Yeah,
like Linda said,
pros and cons list, right?
Yeah.
There's
Yes.
still a place in the world for notepads and pens and pros and cons.
Or even there's probably an app that'll do it too. One of the two. I don't know. I'm a pen person. I usually still write it all down. But for that person, for some of those students who are more savvy or borrowers, there's probably an app for it too. But either way, make sure that they kind of get a feel for, the benefit, the pros and the cons that are out there for them. So good point that you were making overall. Mm-hmm. And so then go ahead, Linda.
No, go. I was just saying, absolutely. You need to know what you have first. Find out what the interest rates you're paying, what are the balances, and then you're going to be contacting other entities or PA Forward. We have a great refinance loan, and we even give loyalty discounts if you had an undergraduate loan with FIA, PA Forward. Then once you consolidate, not only are you getting a great rate because now you're out there, you're established, you have your own income, you have your own FICO score, but we give you a loyalty discount on top of that. So lots of options though. I mean, and that's like you said, you have to weigh the odds, what you're losing, what you're gaining, what's affordable for you. And that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, because some people get confused also, not only between consolidation and refinance, they get confused between combined billing and consolidation or refinance. Combined billing might be where I have 5 or 6 loans with either with the federal government or with a private lender, but yet I just have one payment every month because it's a combined bill. I still have 5 or 6 loans, but I make one payment. That's combined billing, whereas consolidation or refinance, now you have one loan and all the other ones go away, including any benefits you might have had with those. Right. That's why Tiff and Linda, you've been talking about weighing the odds there and weighing your options, because once those loans are paid off, you can't get them back. 60, 90, 120 days later, you can't say, oh, you know what, I want to undo. Can I click the undo button on this consolidation or refinance? Give me my old loans back and undo this one. That's not an option. Once you do it, those loans are gone. They're paid off.
And especially the student that's graduating and they want to be careful their loans don't go into default or fall behind, because in order to consolidate or refinance, they have to be in good standings. So if a student, like even those that are coming back into repayment now, you want to address that. Either I'm going to be able to make these payments, sign up for a different repayment plan offered through the entities that I have it with, or because once you fall behind, and now I'm saying, gee, maybe I should have consolidated that or refinanced it. Then you have the hurdle of let's get it back into good standings in order to refinance or consolidate. So it's really important for students to understand how that can affect them if they just ignore the payments and say, I'll worry about it later. It's a lot harder than worrying about it now.
Yeah, that's a good point. Procrastination is not a virtue when it comes to loans, right? Those are things you have to stay on top of, and those of us who are gray in the beard, right, know that hard decisions that you don't make now are harder later. So
right.
You need to deal with, if you're having trouble paying, man, right away you got to get a hold of whoever your servicer is on your loan and let them know that you're having trouble. Kicking the can down the road is not going to work.
Yeah. Right. And a couple of things I wanted to add on and point out, reemphasize basically is, as you were saying, before you get into the situation where there's a financial difficulty, reach out to the servicer. Let them know that, hey, I'm struggling, before that payment becomes 30 days, 60 days past due. Sometimes, it just sneaks up on you and life happens and something is going to just stop you from making that future payment. But a lot of times students are already knowing, hey, you know what, my budget's a little tight. I'm struggling. I see some trouble down the line. What can I do now? Reach out to your servicer in advance. The consolidation process is not something that can be done in 5 or 10 days. So
Right.
I think now we're in July, especially if we're talking about all of these students, student borrowers who are about to go into repayment. So your monthly installments are going to kick in October. Or if you're that student who just recently graduated and you still had a 6-month grace period, you're coming into repayment, or just whatever the scenario is. Now I think is a good time to do the research, to figure out where you're at, to contact your servicer and figure out, how do I choose a lender? How do I choose some different options? How do I know what refinance will look like for me, what my monthly installments look like? So for that student or that borrower who's about to go into repayment and they know they need some more affordable options for them. If I'm that student or I'm that borrower, I'm kind of saying, should I go with refinance? Should I go with consolidation? What are some things I need to be asking myself specifically to try to figure out which is the best option?
Yeah, when
Well, I
it
guess
comes to doing this
go
stuff,
ahead.
I would say it can be overwhelming,
Mhm.
and that's why I think some people kick the can down the road. It's a little bit too much to take in. There's the terminology, you got to have a new lexicon of terms to think about, and you really, it's just something like cold water in a swimming pool. I mean, you just have to dive in. You just go for it and start looking up your loans, start accumulating your information, and you'll be better off for it. Dive in. I'm sorry, Linda. Go ahead.
No, it's good. It's all exactly. You just have to do your research, understand what you have, what are your benefits, what are you losing. There are federal benefits that, maybe there is an unemployment deferment that I think I might have to use. Well, private lenders offer deferment and forbearances as well. Like, so when you refinance, you're not losing all your benefits, but you want to definitely look at what benefits that lender will provide you, because once you get into the refinance program, it's all different. It just depends who you go with. But the most important thing is to check your credit. Make sure that you are, 670 is the normal, maybe 650 for some credit score. And then, of course, debt to income is always important when you're refinancing. But a student starting out, their debt to income hopefully is low and they shouldn't have a problem there. But still, it's something, to consider as well. I have to make sure. And also when you're refinancing or consolidating, a lender will look at what amounts are you trying to refinance. So for example, if you have a lower amount, say I have $10,000 in loans and I want to refinance it for a better rate, they're not going to let you extend that for 30 years because you would pay triple interest back on something like that. But they will give you options. Maybe you want to consolidate for 10 years or 15 years. And some lenders offer several terms like the PA forward loan, or some offer you very constricted terms. So you have to find your comfort level and do the research as well. But know that a lender should never let you take a small balance and extend it to 30 years because you will be paying way more than you need to, even though that payment might be a little low. We won't let that happen, but there are lenders I'm sure that will. So do the research and understand. And you can use cosigners. I mean, even though you're releasing that cosigner, and a lot of times when you refinance, especially with student that goes out and gets established right away, and they want to say, okay, my cosigner needs to be off this loan, refinancing is a way to do it. And that'll help too. But you
So
can't.
could you explain a little further for that person who's not aware of what a cosigner release option
okay.
is? Because some
Sure.
of our listeners may not know that. So
Yeah, I was going to say, let's take a dictionary break here for real quick, because let me back up just a little bit. We'll get to the cosigner release, but I want to back
okay.
up just a little bit. Linda had mentioned deferments and forbearances.
Wow,
And
that too.
the quickest way, I think, to recognize the difference is that a deferment is something that you're entitled to based on what's written in the promissory note on the loan. It's built in. So like most loans, if you go back to school and you're enrolled at least half time, then you're entitled to put your payments on hold. It's a given, right? Whereas a forbearance is more at the discretion of the lender. You call them and you say, I think I'm gonna have trouble making my payment next month, and they can either say yay or nay. It's not built in. Yeah, and so deferment, kind of you're entitled to that. It's in the contract. Forbearance is more at the discretion of the lender. The other term would be, credit score. I think most people are familiar with that. That's going to be the primary credit bureaus are TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. All three of them have great websites where you can go and learn all kinds of stuff about credit. And, some of us, I pay a little bit of money every month. I don't get paid to say this, to Experian, and I can access all my credit scores, my credit history. I can access that all anytime I want. So credit scores crucial. And then when it comes to debt to income ratio, if you're applying for, a private refinance loan, they're going to be looking at this stuff. They're going to look at FICO. They're going to look at your debt to income ratio. And debt to income ratio is a fraction, and the denominator is your gross monthly income. The numerator is your required monthly payments, mortgage, car payment, minimum payments on credit card, things you have to pay. You got really kind of like no choice in. So that fraction is important. And when that fraction gets above about 50%, you're going to start to have trouble getting a private loan refinance accomplished there. And let me give you a quick example to paint the picture better. Maybe is, let's say that your gross pay is $4,000 a month, and $2,000 goes out the door immediately in mortgage, car payments, and other required payments. 2,000 divided by 4,000, that is a 50% debt to income ratio. So that's where you start you start to have trouble getting approved for a private loan.
I think it's good that you mentioned that, because it's not even just with private loans. I always talk to, like, if I'm talking to students or recent graduates, pay attention to not only your credit, but your debt to income ratio, because they're kind of like out there getting ready to acquire things such as a car or a home and things like that. And lenders in general, not all, but many will check out that DTI or debt to income ratio that's out there. I used to listen to all sorts of things that was talking about good credit and this and that. And a lot of times they were saying, ideally, if you could keep it at 30%, that's perfect. Like fresh out of college and never go higher, that's perfect. Now, that's not always realistic, but they were saying that's a really good place to be. And again, like you were saying, don't do over 50. So again, not just for the private loans, but I think it's a good point to know what it is and to monitor it from time to time.
Exactly. Because when you're down in that 20 to 30% range or even lower, now you have more discretionary income to do more fun things with, right? So, on to the cosigner release. If we look nationwide at private education loans, I'm going to say about 90 to 95% of them, the student is the borrower, but they need a cosigner. It's just kind of how it goes. Right. Most students, 17, 18, 19, 20 years old, they just don't have that credit history. They can't get a private loan on their own. They need a cosigner. But some lenders offer a cosigner release. Here at PA Forward, it's 48 on-time monthly payments. After 48 on-time monthly payments, the cosigner can be released. Sometimes it's easier to find a cosigner when they know they can be released. Right? I don't want to be on this loan for 15 years. Can I be released ever? Well, yeah. So after 48 payments, that makes the cosigner maybe feel better about signing on to that loan. But the truth of the matter is that refinancing a loan, that's kind of like the same as a cosigner release, right? Because if I'm a student, I graduated, I got that great job, and now I'm 2 to 3 years into the workforce, and I've got my own credit rating, credit history, I can qualify for a pretty good loan on my own. If I refinance after 2 years, I have a new loan that doesn't have a cosigner. The old loans are paid off, and that cosigner is now released, right? So refinancing accomplishes the same thing.
Right. And debt to income, remember, is a lot of times when you're trying to get unsecured debt, and that means that there's no collateral. Because I've had people say, "Well, I just bought a car. Why can't I get a student loan?" And it's because the car has collateral, the car loan, because that means if you don't pay it, they're going to repossess that car, so that they get their money back. But an unsecured loan looks seriously at debt to income because there's nothing to repossess to get that money back.
Can't take my education back,
Right,
right? Once
right. Not gonna suck out your brain. But so that's why it's really important when you're looking even for credit cards and things of that nature. That's important to think about. And when you are refinancing, if you're for a entity to look at your credit scores, and it's sort of a little bit off topic, but it still relates, is that they really are expecting a student to have three avenues of credit. So not just having your student loan, but do you have a credit card or maybe a car loan? So you really need three established forms of credit to establish a really good credit rating. So three avenues. So it's okay to get that credit card, but don't abuse it.
Right. There you go.
But it will help you. It'll help you with a refinance because it shows that you know how to manage money. And that's truly what the credit score is all about. It's telling a lender or an entity that, you're able to pay them back, or you know how to budget to pay back. So refinancing can certainly help a student, get one payment, a better interest rate, especially if you as a student were out there and we're basically in bill panic and you just applied for a loan with whoever just to get it approved and to get that balance paid. And now you're looking at, oh my goodness, I have a 12% loan for the next 10 years or so. And maybe, you can refinance and get a 5% loan. So it makes a big difference. And there's lots of calculators that families and students can use to test that out. Even us, even at FIA, when we in our PA Forward loan, you don't have to apply yet, but we offer you a calculator. And we're not the only one. There's plenty out there, but it's good for a student to get an idea of what they would be saving. And most lenders will, even if you contacted them and said, "Gee, I want to refinance this and here's my information," most will counsel you and tell you you're either making a good choice or maybe you should wait a while, get a better credit score or whatever. If they're good at counsel, a lot of times they'll, counsel you in the right direction. So it's okay to be contacting and looking and doing that research.
So let's say I want to refinance. I'm thinking, you know what? I think based off of what I've weighed, refinancing seems like a good idea. At what point should I start? What's that process look like if I chose to do that? And because you're PA Forward, what's it look like with PA Forward?
Yeah, it never hurts to start thinking about the stuff way early. Really, doing homework ahead of time always pays off. Then you're not in a rush. I'm 1 month from the end of my grace period. Oh my heavens! Now what do I do? I'm in my new job. I have a busy schedule. I'm working overtime or whatever, and now I got to think about this refinance stuff. That's when mistakes are made, and maybe you make a bad choice. So the more you think about ahead of time, the better. And I'm going to bring up maybe one of the biggest factors that I want everybody to consider, and that is forgiveness programs. Because when you're looking at, should I do a federal direct consolidation loan or should I do a private refinance? One of the biggest differences between federal and private is forgiveness programs, especially if you're working for a nonprofit or you're working for a government organization and maybe your income is low enough that you could qualify for an income-driven repayment plan, which you can learn about on studentaid.gov.
Mm-hmm.
But in those cases, you're going to want to keep those federal loans as they are, because public service loan forgiveness, like teacher forgiveness, nursing forgiveness, some of the forgiveness programs that are part of the standard repayment plans, and on the federal side, those types of forgivenesses don't exist in private loan world. In private loan world, you usually have two types of forgiveness, and that is if the borrower or cosigner passes away, or becomes permanently and totally disabled. So the public service and teacher and that kind of stuff, that's federal stuff. So that would be my first consideration is there some type of a benefit on my existing loans that I don't want to lose? And if so, might be worth it for me to keep those loans in place.
Good point.
Right. And then, of course, when you're doing a refinance application, they're going to ask you, well, who's your loan held with? So you're going to have to know who your servicer is or your lender, like in a refinance. So I will just talk about refinance. You need to advise, here's the lender I have, here's my account number, here's my balances, because then what we will do, for example, or a refinance lender will do is reach out to those lenders that you listed for payoff amount. And so that they can know, here's the actual balances that you're looking to refinance. And then it's just an application process, just like any other loan. They'll run your credit and they'll check your debt to income. You'll have to sign the promissory note. Normally everything's done electronically. And then what happens is the entity you're refinancing with, like Dan said, pays off all those old balances. And now I have a new loan that will go into repayment. And if the repayment date isn't, like, say, for example, they say, okay, you're going to pay on the first of the month. And the first of the month, I have to pay my mortgage. So that's really, and I get paid every other week. You can certainly call a lender and say, can we change this to the 20th? And I am positive that most lenders will. I know we would. Yeah.
That's an
Go ahead,
important
Dan.
time frame, right, Linda? That switch over, like when the loans are being paid off and the new one is coming into play, you have to keep paying on the old ones until they're paid off. Right? You don't want to let them go delinquent. And usually they'll set it up for you so it's like that. So you're not making double payments. That's the other side of it, right? The other side of it is, hold it. Now I can't pay on all of these here and pay on my new loan. So that transition period is crucial, but the lenders usually work together to make sure that's very doable.
Right.
Front loading the process a little bit. There are calculators out there. There's a calculator on the PA Forward site. If you go there, there's calculators on various websites to calculate whether, what's it going to look like. I want to look ahead before I sign a master promissory note on this consolidation or refinance. I want to know, what if I refinance this amount of money and I get this interest rate and I repay over 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 25 years, whatever. What is my monthly payment and what's the total amount I'm repaying on the loan? You can calculate all of that way ahead of time. On the federal side, there's forecasters and calculators on studentaid.gov, and on the private loan side, you can use PA Forward's forecaster calculator, whether you're going to use us as your lender or not. The calculator is out there for you to take a look at it, see if it's going to be worth it.
That's at FIA.org. For those
FIA.org, and then one of the first things you see there is a button for the PA Forward private student loan program, and that'll get you to our site, and the calculator is pretty prominent out there.
Right. And you'll know ahead of time just by working with a counselor or an entity. They'll tell you what the new payments will be. A lot of time your rates and your payments will be determined by whether I want to pay that off in 10, 15, 20, 25 years. And again, that depends on the balance. They're not going to let you extend a $10,000 loan for 30 years. But say I have 20 or 30,000, then maybe I can, what's comfortable for me. If I choose a 15-year term, here's the payment. If I choose a 20-year term, here's the payment. And borrowers need to determine, because everybody's situation is unique. So there's not one answer. I mean, an entity's not going to tell you, I think you should choose this. They're going to give you all your options, though. And then you as a borrower have to decide. Yeah. And again, no prepayment penalty. So if I just need that smaller payment right now, that may be what I do. But then later on, don't remember, you can also refinance a refinance loan. So the economy gets better and the interest rates are lower. Do it. So you always want to watch that.
So I have a question about that. So if let's say I already have a loan that was refinanced. Do I have to have a new student loan in order to refi the refinance loan, or I can just do a straight refinance, no big deal? You know how like with a consolidation loan, sometimes you have to have a new loan to get something out of that. That's how it used to be, I know. So in the refi world, it's just one of those things where, hey, you know what? Yep, some better things. And how long do you have to wait in between? So if I refinance right now and things were solid, and I notice a huge drop in rates, a year and a half from now, can I refi, or do I have to wait a set period of time?
So Tiff, you're on the federal side there. I don't want to say this, but you're kind of showing your age there. Because
that's why you call them here.
that used to be the case, right? Back in the day, back when we had to walk in waist steep snow both ways to and from school, back in those days, you could not reconsolidate unless you got a new loan, right? And so with borrowers who are a little newer in this process, no, like for instance, with my Federal Plus loans, there was a new feature kind of that came out in consolidation world. So I consolidated a consolidation loan. There were no new loans, just consolidated a consolidation, right? So and that's possible to do. And on the refinance side in private loan world, then yes, you can refinance a refinance loan even though if there's no new loan out there.
All right.
The only thing you want to watch for is if a lender charges origination fees, because via we do not, but there are lenders that will charge. So if you're refinancing your refinance loan, are you paying an origination fee? Because that might just increase that balance just a little bit. But truly, there's lots of options, just like a mortgage, if you want to refinance because the rates are better, you can refinance a loan. And if you go back to school,
it's kind of like if you have a credit card balance sitting out there at 12% or 14% or whatever, if it's a store card, heaven help you if it's 26 or 27% or something like that. And then you want that paid off by some other card where you get a special 0 or 2.99 for 12 months or something like that. You got to be thinking in your mind, right? Because I can have that new card pay off that balance, but they're going to charge me a 3% fee, a 4% fee on whatever's transferred over to that new card. Well, you got to be thinking in your mind, okay, so if I just left the balance on the 26%, and I could pay it off in 3 months, how much interest would I have paid? Is that less than or more than the fee they're going to charge me to supposedly get a better interest rate? So it's the same kind of calculation in your mind. If I'm going to refinance and they're going to charge me some kind of a big upfront fee, then maybe either I need to find a different lender, or maybe I need to wait a month or two and let me work on my credit score, my debt to income ratio, because if I have a higher score and a lower debt to income ratio, maybe I'll get a better loan with lesser fees on it. There's some considerations there to make, because you don't want to just blindly consolidate or refinance and actually take a step backwards financially. That's where the calculators come into play. In the calculators, you can put into the calculator, what if they charge me this fee? Now, is it still worth it?
Hey.
Ooh, that's a lot of stuff here that we're taking in, but it's good information. So quick recap, and then I wanted you all, if you didn't mind, I don't think you will, just to give us some of the highlights of our own PA Forward refinance program. But just quickly, just some pros and cons when it comes to that our listeners should listen to when it comes to refinancing. 2 or 3 benefits to refinancing, and then maybe 2 or 3 things that you want to be cautious about depending on the type of loan you have, rates, or possible benefits. I'm kind of already saying what you did, but
I'd say biggest benefit is simplicity. I get rid of having to think about multiple loans, multiple interest rates, and maybe even multiple servicers. maybe I'm sending this amount of money to here every month and that amount of money somewhere else. I consolidate or refinance. No, I have one loan. It's in one place. I have one payment. So easier to keep track of. I'm going to throw that out there as maybe one of the biggest benefits.
All right.
Yeah, definitely. Benefit is combining all those debts into one. Moving the con would be, you definitely want to know what am I giving up with that consolidation or that refinance, and doing the homework. I mean, certainly, I always tell families, you don't want to use the entity that sends you the most mail, because that's called marketing. And you need to do what's important for you, not necessarily what's important for that company. So, having those options and doing it and waiting until you're in your grace period to make some decisions about it. And one other point I'll point out that we really didn't mention, but I want to be careful with, because I've talked to families that said, yeah, I only had to pay $600 for them to consolidate my debt. And, consolidation with the federal government is free. So you should not be paying a company to do that and save those funds.
Yeah, generally speaking, right?
Refinancing might charge you.
If they want you to pay, just run away. That's
New slogan, right?
Right.
So I would throw one other benefit out there, one other pro, and that would be potentially, you could get a lower interest rate with no fees. If you pick the right lender, you have a good credit score, low debt to income ratio, you could be going literally from 8% or higher to 4% or lower, which is huge when you're paying back something over 10, 15, 20 years.
Right, especially if you've gotten a higher interest rate private loan. Many students, again, are in bill panic, and they just do whatever they have to do to pay the bill at the time. And now I'm graduating, and what do I do now? So the PA Forward program, just to give you a quick, zero origination fees, low cost interest rates. We give the 0.25% interest rate discount for direct debit if you choose to pay in that manner. There's even a 0.35% loyalty discount. So if you have at least one PA Forward loan and then you consolidate with PA Forward, we give you that loyalty discount. There's never any prepayment penalties. You can choose biweekly payments if you want, because sometimes that helps bring down that debt really fast. And then we have repayment terms of 5, 7, 10, 15, and 20 years. So you find that comfort level. What can I do to pay it back? And again, if you do a cosigner with your refinance loan, we have a cosigner release on the refinance loan as well. So it's a great option to keep in the mix if you are looking for that. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, I'm going to say something else to think about with PA Forward is that this is your state's loan program, and the earnings that come from all the PA Forward loans, whether they're undergrad, grad, parent, or refinance. That goes back into public service. That goes back into public service benefits. And so, supporting the program is a win-win for everybody involved. And a lot of it, you think about it, we at FIA, one of the big things we try to do is keep the Pennsylvania state grant amount as high as possible. Well, people who borrow with PA Forward are helping to keep the PA state grant amount up there as high as it can be. To me, that's I like to support programs that I can feel good about what I'm doing. It helps me, helps other people too.
Definitely an added benefit to everything. So for those who want to know, how do they get more information about PA Forward? They go where?
Yes, so right to the website is a good way to go. You can always contact myself and Linda. Is there some way we can put our contact information out there? But or is that dangerous?
So let's go. No, go for it. Say it if you want to say it, and then it'll also come through the transcripts. But if you want to say it for those who are listening, you can share that with them. For those who are watching the audio piece, they won't see the communication, but we'll make sure we get it out to them.
All right. Well, I'll spell it out. It'll be Daniel, DANIEL .WRAY at pheaa.org, daniel.ray@phea.org. Linda, I'm sorry, you're a little bit more than 4 letters there on the last name.
It's Linda, Linda Pacewicz, and it's not Pacewicz, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. It's PACEWICZ at phea.org. And certainly our website at phea.org also has a lot of information. If you click on it, you'll see the PA Forward program, and then you would just click on the refinance options, and it'll give you a lot of detail. So all good.
Right. Linda, real quick, you got to tell the story about how many dates it was with your husband before this last name thing got dealt with. Really?
It was when I met my husband. It took us 3 dates for him to tell me how to pronounce his last name. So I guess he wanted to make sure that it was a good thing.
Yeah. I'm not going to bother explaining this to you if we're not going to stay together, right?
That's a great story. Thanks, Dad.
It works.
Oh my goodness, I know. I was like, what? You should have told me right up front how to pronounce this.
So for 3 days you were saying it wrong, right?
Yeah, exactly. And my son, it was always a talking point for my son because, I would tell him it's a conversation piece because he's like, nobody ever pronounces it right. And I'm like, well,
Anyway.
that's okay.
Well, they got it right this time. So hopefully the word spreads, they say it right. Hopefully everyone caught all the information that was talked about. It was a great discussion, whether you're consolidating, you're refinancing. It's always good to know what you have, what your options are, the pros and the cons to it. If you want more information again on PA Forward, visit our website. If you want information just in general about any of the products and services that PHEA offers, phea.org. I'm Tiffanie Devan, one of your higher education access partners. So if you can't reach Dan and Linda, based off of what they said, you can always find me and I'll direct you to Dan and Linda as well. Thanks again, Dan. Thanks again, Linda. Come back anytime to the podcast, and you all were the best. Any last parting words?
We just want to thank you for the chance to be here, Tiff. It's always great working with you.
All right.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.